We're back, new and improved, refocused to give you the best coverage of Cyclone sports every week. And today, we break down how Iowa State will fit into the new Big 12. We've got conference win totals, a full game-by-game breakdown of Iowa State's football schedule, predictions on who will get into and win the Big 12 championship, and who will get into the college football playoff. We follow that up with a preview of this year's Cyclone volleyball team and how the Big 12 is the most wide open it's been in the sport of volleyball for a long time with the absence of Texas. Today is Sunday, August 25th. I'm Matt Menson, and welcome to Season 2 of the Cornfield Sports Pod. I'd like to welcome my host in, Blake Peterson.
What's going on? Great to be back. Great to be back indeed. Get through that summer hiatus, a little show reformatting, and we're back and we're better than ever. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's dive right into it. Cyclone football. Let's get into these conference win totals here. For the Big 12. This is going to be just conference play. I don't have non-con factored into these here. But Blake, let's start here. Who do you got at the top of yours?
At the top of mine, I've definitely got Oklahoma State.
So you're leading with Oklahoma State. Who's your number two?
My number two, definitely Utah.
Number two. So Oklahoma State, Utah. That's your Big 12 championship.
Yes.
What's that lineup for you as? What do you got as their conference records?
Conference records. I have Oklahoma State going 9-0, and Utah's going 8-1.
All right. So my top two. This is my Big 12 championship game right here. I have West Virginia as the top seed in the Big 12. I have them running the table through the conference slate. 9-0, perfect. I have Oklahoma State at 8-1. I do have Utah missing out on it, going 7-2 with losses to both West Virginia and Oklahoma State. Let's break it down a little bit further. Who's your 3 and 4?
3 and 4, definitely West Virginia. Throw in Iowa State at number 4.
All right. Curious, what do you have West Virginia as their record?
If I could pull up my West Virginia is a solid 8-1 with one loss against Oklahoma State.
So you got Oklahoma State winning tiebreaker then, or
so Oklahoma State.
How did you end up with Utah in the championship game over West Virginia?
We'll go. I'm blanking.
Because West Virginia, because if you've got West Virginia with only one loss to Oklahoma State, they hold head-to-head tiebreaker over Utah.
Mm-hmm. So
how do you end up with Utah in the Big 12 championship?
Because Utah lost only one to Oklahoma State as well, and then West Virginia lost only one to Oklahoma State.
Right, so you've got a triangle there.
Yes.
So then, what is it that breaks the three-way tie that separates West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Utah? Because it should be common opponents.
Mm-hmm. It should be common opponents, and probably their performance against them. I'm not too sure how the Big 12 seeds.
So if their common opponents are each other, then you've got 1-1 against each, and undefeated against everybody else.
Yes.
So you got to have something else that separates that tie.
Would it be strength of non-con schedule?
I don't think it shouldn't have anything to do with non-con. But anyway, my third slot, I have Utah. I have them as the only school in the conference with a 7-2 conference record. Those two losses are to West Virginia and Oklahoma State, respectively. I follow that up. I have a 3-way tie for 4th place, and the tie is broken down. The tie is broken with Iowa State being 4th in the conference with a 6-3. I have K-State also going 6-3, and UCF going 6-3. Breaking that 3-way tie, I have Iowa State and K-State both going
1-1 against common opponents, with UCF going 0-2 against common opponents. And then from there, to break the two-way tie between Iowa State and K-State, I do have Iowa State with a head-to-head win in that Farmageddon game last week of the year. What do you got for your 5 and 6, Blake?
For your 5 and 6, I didn't really have a lot of time to count this down, but a lot of it has to do with K-State and Kansas in the middle too.
Okay, what did you have for their records?
K-State's, I had four losses. 4 losses against Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Kansas, and Iowa State.
Interesting. What did I have for K-State here for their losses? I had Iowa State as a loss. I had Oklahoma State as a loss. And I had West Virginia as a loss. I think they got lucky escaping Utah and UCF. I think UCF would have been a dangerous one for K-State. But you said you had them losing to Kansas. I've got them beating Kansas at Bill Snyder. That's a home game for K-State.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go beyond that. The next slot, I got another 3-way tie with 5 and 4 teams here between Arizona, Kansas, and Texas Tech. Now, due to lack of common opponents, I actually was not able to break the tie entirely here. Between Arizona and Kansas, they are both 3-1 in common opponents and don't play each other. So I've got asterisks on those. Texas Tech, however, was 2-2 against the common opponents, which drops them beneath Arizona and Kansas as the third team in that 3-way tie. What about you? What are you sitting at for the center of the conference standings here?
Let me pull it back up. Definitely in the center, I had there's Utah. Let's see.
Utah?
No,
you said you had them in the championship.
Nah, Utah. I didn't mean that.
I ain't know what you mean, dude.
Nah, me neither.
You just casually have a 5 and 4 Utah that also only had 1 loss.
Nah.
No.
I had UCF like dead in the center with losses against Iowa State, West Virginia, Utah.
Okay, so you had them at 6 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
As well. Did you? Who else? So you had who all did you have at 6 and 3 in conference play? Iowa State, UCF. Who else?
I think that's about it.
Okay, so you just had the 2 then.
Yep.
Who did you have at 5 and 4?
5 and 4.
Because that was where I had the Arizona, Kansas, Texas Tech tie.
Nah, I had a. I'm basically reading off of like the charts.
Well, yeah, that's why we have the charts.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to count though.
You didn't total them?
Yeah, I didn't total them just yet.
We're recording, dude.
I know.
Anyway, 4 and 5 in the conference. I had TCU and Cincinnati both there. That was an easy tie to break. I have TCU winning a head-to-head game between the two. As I'll continue down the ladder here, I had Baylor at 3 and 6, BYU at 2 and 7. I had another unbreakable tie here between Arizona State and Colorado, both of whom went 1 and 8 in conference play.
And you
don't play each other, and they both went 0 and 8 against common opponents, is what I have.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, again, there's another tie that I'm not going to be able to break based on wins, losses alone. And then dead last in the conference, I have Houston going winless in conference play.
My condolences to Houston.
They're not good.
No, they're not.
Not until they prove otherwise. Anyway, well, how's the rest of yours stack out here?
Basically, the same way. Like Arizona State. I also had like Arizona kind of like lower in the conference too, and Yeah, definitely Houston going dead last, 0-8 in the conference.
Wait, you said Arizona toward the bottom. What did you have Arizona as a record?
Arizona's record is 2-7.
2-7. Okay, we need to talk about this here, because I did have them with 5-4. Let's go through the list here. Arizona's record here. Arizona State at home. You got that as a win or a loss?
Arizona State at home against who again?
Arizona. We're talking about Arizona's schedule. Does Arizona win that game?
Arizona wins against Arizona State.
Okay, so that's a win.
Yes.
Away against BYU. I have that as a win.
Away against BYU is a loss.
That's bold. At home against Colorado.
Home against Colorado is a loss.
Win. At home against Houston.
Home against Houston is a win.
Win.
That's common knowledge.
They play K-State in the non-con, so we're not counting that. TCU at home.
TCU at home is a loss.
Win. Texas Tech at home. Loss.
Loss.
UCF on the road. Loss.
Loss.
Utah on the road. Loss.
Loss.
West Virginia at home. Loss.
Loss.
I don't know where you're getting these losses against BYU and Colorado. They're not good teams. That's certainly a take. Who else did you have that was wildly different from mine? Who did you have as your 4 and 5 teams here? What did you have for Cincinnati's record?
Go to BYU. Ours is definitely different against BYU.
Okay.
Tell me what you had there.
BYU. So home against Arizona. Loss.
Home against Arizona is a loss.
Loss. Away at Arizona State. Loss.
Away at Arizona State. Loss.
Away at Baylor. Loss.
Find it. Win.
Really?
Yes.
Really? All right. Home against Houston.
Home against Houston.
Win.
Win, obviously.
Home against Kansas.
Loss.
Win. For no reason other than that just seems like a trap game. That feels like a trap game. I'm taking BYU in it. Home against K-State. Loss. Home against Oklahoma State.
Loss.
Away at UCF. Loss.
Loss, definitely.
Away at Utah. Loss, but it's the Holy War, so I'm a little bit tempted to say anything can happen. So, yeah, I get 2 and 7 out of that for BYU. All right. And then did you have a score written down for the Big 12 championship yet?
I did not.
All right. I've got Oklahoma State winning that 27-14 right now as my preseason prediction. They will avenge their loss at Milan Puskar Stadium. And both teams will likely make the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State as a one-loss conference champion, and then West Virginia as a one-loss runner-up. I think both would be very difficult for the committee to leave out of the 12-team playoff that we now have.
Yeah.
But before we get to diving too far deep into that, so we're talking about these win totals here, and I'm gonna be honest, they don't really line up all that well with what the AP has ranked these teams. Utah at 12th is the highest in the Big 12 right now. Oklahoma State is 17th. K-State at 18th. Arizona at 21. Kansas at 22. Also receiving votes, Iowa State, West Virginia, and the one measly vote that went to Colorado, which is at this point just media glazing because Colorado is not good until they prove that they are.
No, exactly. I don't know where the hype was last year.
It's just because it's because Deion's a firebrand.
I don't know where it came from. It's like Deion Sanders. Yeah,
it's Deion's an entertainer. That doesn't make his football teams good.
No, it doesn't.
He had 4 wins last year on a team that was not good. he had a lot of talent that he didn't know what to do with.
No, all the hype like went around that, and then like all of a sudden it just sparked, and that's probably
He had a lot of raw talent that didn't work very well together.
yeah. It's like wasn't that
I would be shocked if that is a good locker room situation going on at Colorado.
that might be.
Because I mean, you can't tell me with having Dion as your dad that Shedeur doesn't have an ego problem. He's got to have an ego problem.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Hunter, the dude is obviously the best two-way player in the country. I mean, he's the only real significant two-way player in the country. If you're doing that, you've got some pretty serious talent. And from everything that I've been able to tell, Travis Hunter also has an ego problem. I can't see that boding well in the Colorado locker room. And so that's going to play issues for them probably across the entire season. And that's why I don't see them getting all that far here in the standings. 1-8 in the Big 12. And we'll see if they've managed to scrap some wins together in the non-con. I know there's been some pretty serious talk about Colorado State potentially knocking them off. So
We'd love to see that.
It'd be entertaining.
Entertaining for us too.
It'd be entertaining for us, but yeah, it will probably end up being a more entertaining game than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's break down Iowa State's schedule here, game by game here. August 31st, North Dakota. This one's already got a kickoff time set at 2:30 p.m. in Jack Trice Stadium. It's an FCS opponent. Matt Campbell's not going to open up the playbook, but he shouldn't have to chalk this one up to a win.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think there's any need to further comment on that one. September 7th at the Team Out East. I'm kind of curious what you have to say about this one.
Still a no, because I feel like we've always been messy. Like first road game, it's going to be messy, and like looking back at prior looking back at prior matchups like to the Team Out
We have a
East.
history of shooting ourselves in the foot against.
Yes, basically.
Yeah, no,
I feel like that's going to carry on too.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then we also have the issue of we have a tendency not to open up the playbook until conference play begins. And I understand that there is some strategic value to doing that in order to help you climb in your conference rankings. But you should be willing to pull out all the stops to be a team that is historically, arguably your biggest rival. So if Campbell is willing to fully open up the playbook, I think we can make it a great game. But at the same time, it also becomes very difficult to predict because both teams are bringing back a lot of experience. We're bringing back, 17 returning starters or something like that, and I think they're bringing back 16.
Was it like 80% of
It's a lot.
of returners? So it's like
Both teams are bringing a ton back.
Yeah.
Now, what I think might actually play to our advantage in this game is this will be the first game that Kirk Ferentz is done serving his suspension.
Yes.
And
so he'll be back.
He will be back for that. But in my opinion, Kirk Ferentz has actually been kind of the problem for the Team Out East's offense. So in the Cyhawk game, as he's back to coaching for that week, maybe it's actually kind of a harsh adjustment for the Team Out East. And it causes them to have a few more stumbles than they otherwise would. We know they're going to have stumbles on offense, but, maybe it does increase the amount that they otherwise would. And that could be an opportunity to exploit. But for the time being, Kinnick Stadium, it may be ugly, but it is a difficult place to play. Chalk that one up to an L. Week after that's a bye week. We'll follow that up. Arkansas State, the kickoff time for that one is currently set to 1 p.m. This one's going to be back in Jack Trice Stadium. Blake?
Still a dub.
Yeah, win.
Mm-hmm.
They're a small G5 team that has no history of being even remotely good. So, yeah, chalk it up to a win. Yep. Not a whole lot of conversation that needs to be had here. September 28th at Houston. Win.
Easy.
Win. Yeah, again, I've heard some people talk about this game at Houston potentially being a trap game, with it being at TDECU instead of at Jack Trice Stadium. Houston coming into the season feeling like they have something to prove, which they most certainly do have something to prove.
Oh, yeah.
They have a lot that they need to prove. They have pretty much nothing that they have proven other than that they are not particularly good and that anybody in the Big 12 is capable of beating them. So, but if we're wanting to talk about a trap game, I don't think you can really start reasonably talk about a trap game until, I don't know, after the first game in conference play. I really don't think you can have a trap game as the first game in conference play because what exactly are you trapping here? There's no conference standings yet, so how can you have a trap? So for that reason alone, trap game is just a notwithstanding kind of thing. Yeah, chalk it up to a win. Win against Houston.
Probably one of the easiest way we can open up conference play.
Yes, indeed. October 5th, we begin Rocktober hosting Baylor.
Easy.
I got that as a win.
Yes.
We should have won it last time they were in Jack Trice. We should have won it 2 times ago when they were in Jack Trice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we make this mistake again. We chalk this one up to a win.
Yep.
The other thing, too, is with Baylor, I think Dave Aranda looked really good right away and then kind of fell off. It seems like the Big 12 has kind of figured out Dave Aranda, and they know what to do about him. He's a respectable coach, but he did not have the coaching talent that Matt Rule did, and that's why I think it's going to be a little bit easier to chalk this one up as a win, especially at home against Baylor. It's a team that we haven't beat at home in a while. The fans are going to be itching for it. Jack Trice will be jumping for it. And if we do roll through the year starting off before that, going, 1-2-3-1, I mean, that might set up for a good afternoon kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
Draw a decent number of eyeballs on the big screen. So let's it's a good motivation spot for Iowa State to be in right now. And I think a lot of the signs are pointing in a good direction for us for that game. October 12th at West Virginia. Loss, definitely. I already told you before. I have West Virginia running the table.
Yep.
I'm real high on West Virginia this year. I think that they bring a ton of talent back too. Neil Brown is an underrated coach in my opinion, and I think that they do have the capacity to beat every single team that is on their regular season schedule, and that they actually will. I do actually have them beating Penn State as well in the non-con, as well as steamrolling Pitt. So
I would imagine they would steamroll Pitt, but I wasn't thinking you'd have like Penn State.
I do have West Virginia beating Penn State. I don't trust Drew Aller as far as I can throw him, and he's a pretty big dude, so I can't throw him very far. So yeah, I don't think Penn State is as good as they are hyped up to be. I think they're carrying a lot of water from the old Big Ten East, which was hyped up as one of the best divisions in college football, and now we're going to get to see them play a little bit more competition against competition outside of that, and I think we're going to see them fare fairly similarly to how they did in the Big Ten East. They're not going to be picking up many more wins, even though they're against opponents that are traditionally not as difficult as the Ohio States and the Michigan States and the Michigans of the world. All right, October 19th, we host UCF. Loss.
This one I have as a dub.
All right, this is where we need to get into this one here.
Mm-hmm. So break it down for me.
UCF is a good team. I'm high on UCF, and this seems like the kind of mid-season game that Gus Malzahn is going to pull something on the road because that's what Gus Malzahn does. Mm-hmm. I do not want to have to host UCF in the middle of the season. That's a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm. And I could see that as one of our home games. That
they got Oklahoma State with it last year.
Mm-hmm.
I do not trust any team outside of some of the biggest powerhouses in football against UCF in the middle of the season when UCF is on the road,
mm-hmm.
because they just do dangerous stuff like that.
Yep. And with our similar records, I feel like more of our struggles are going to be on the road. Mostly, I've got like all of our home matchups staying pretty strong. I feel like Iowa State comes out on top with this.
So if we were playing them at the Bounce House, you would have it chalked up as a loss then?
That would be a close loss.
Okay. After that, we do have another bye week. Only 3 games in October, so
that kind of sucks.
It does suck because we always play really good in October for some reason. Although I feel like a hypocrite saying that because I just was talking about how we're going to lose to UCF because it's UCF in the middle of the season on the road, and that's what they do. But yes, bye week to end the month of October, and we'll begin the month of November right away on the 2nd at home, Texas Tech.
That'll be a homecoming dub.
It's a Texas team in November. Win. Texas team in November at Jack Trice Stadium. It better be cold. Win. And yes, it is homecoming.
Yeah.
So little bit of extra motivation there. I don't think it's not the same kind of extra push that you get, at like a high school level of a sport when you're playing some rival on your team's homecoming, but because that's a whole different animal. But like I said, Texas team coming to Ames in November. Chalk it up. This one's a win. All right, the one that a lot of Iowa State fans have circled on their schedule, November 9th at Arrowhead Stadium, which Kansas is using as their home field for Big 12 play. This is at Kansas. I've got this one as a W.
I've got this one as an L. So I will say atmosphere, it's going to feel like a bowl game. It's definitely going to feel like a bowl game.
I think atmosphere is going to feel like a home game for us.
We can travel.
That we do.
Yeah. We've seen the Big 12 tournament in basketball.
We know what Iowa State does in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
You just gave us another chance this year to do that.
Yeah, basically. They also know they could sell tickets so much easier for this one.
Mm-hmm. The Iowa State alumni base is very strong in Kansas City. There's a lot of fans down there that can't make it to a ton of games at Jack Trice Stadium. A game at Arrowhead Stadium will be much, much easier for them to go to.
Yeah.
Expect Iowa State fans to massively show out at Arrowhead Stadium against Kansas in ways that other conference opponents do not show up to play at Arrowhead. I think that is going to it's going to be more of a mental challenge for Kansas than they would otherwise be used to, even in road games.
Yeah, I feel
because they're expecting a friendly crowd that they're not going to have.
Nah, but I'm thinking of this the completely other way around. I see more with the loss on my end. I feel like this is more of a mental challenge to us.
See, I disagree. When you've got the crowd behind you, which I anticipate that we will, that very much reduces mental burdens.
Mm-hmm. And if it is going to turn out that way, then I can expect the TV to heavily cover the Iowa State crowd that shows up.
Yeah, and I think that's a fairly reasonable expectation because Iowa State will show out to this. That's one of the things that we hear talking about Ames. You mentioned this game a lot. If you talk to someone about this, who goes to football games here at Jack Trice Stadium, the question is going to be, are you going to drive down to Kansas City for it? It's the same thing we talk about during the Big 12 tournament for men's or women's. It's like, oh, are you going? Because it's a reasonable expectation that there's going to be a lot of people going. So and football is the most popular sport too. It is even more popular than basketball. Arrowhead Stadium holds more people. You can sell more tickets. There's going to be a very large rush from Ames that goes down. There's going to be a large rush from Des Moines that goes down. And obviously, like I said, talking about our alumni base in Kansas City, it's huge. So expect a lot of them to show up there. And my goodness, if Arrowhead Stadium was anywhere remotely near the Power and Light District, that'd be the biggest party they've ever had.
Since you're a big Chiefs guy, how much can Arrowhead hold?
I believe it's 72,000. Let me look at that real quick. No internet. Oh, interesting. But yeah, it'll certainly be a hell of an atmosphere at Arrowhead Stadium.
You were close. It was 76,000.
I knew it was 70 something.
Mm-hmm.
I know ours at Jack Trice is 62,500.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. November 16th at home, Cincinnati. Win. Cincinnati doesn't bring that much to the table. I think they're going to overperform expectations, but only because of a favorable schedule.
Also, their chili sucks.
Yes. Well, that's if you are actually dumb enough to call it chili. Looking at you, Bearcat Matt. Yeah. I see no reason to believe why we shouldn't beat Cincinnati. Yeah. I have them winning 4 conference games because their slate is favorable. And that's it. Ordinarily, they would have less wins. They just got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
November 23rd at Utah. Loss. We're not going to win in Rice Eccles Stadium. It's just not going to happen.
No. And seeing how dominant Utah is, Utah's been, and their performance in previous years, nah.
My opinion on this game could change depending on how well Utah faces the test of the Big 12 over the course of the season, because it is a different slate of competition than what they've gotten in the Pac-12. That said, they are still a decent team until proven otherwise. They are still certainly a top 25 team until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And Iowa State right now may or may not be a top 25 team. I've got them somewhere pretty close to that edge.
Now they'll definitely inch towards that.
8-4 is probably in, but it's certainly not guaranteed.
No.
So yeah, that's where I have. Whereas Utah is going to be a ranked team when all is said and done. They're a better team. They're going to have home field advantage. They're going to be packing out against the Big 12 because they're excited to do everything they can against these new opponents and forge new rivalries. And then our last game here, November 30th, Kansas State. Win.
I did have this as a loss at first, but yes, win. It's my biggest hope is that the students will show out after Thanksgiving.
Against Kansas State, you want to get students to show out after Thanksgiving, have us play Kansas State.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you're going to do it.
Or Texas,
but we don't play them anymore.
No.
Because they're out of here and don't need to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do like having Kansas State at home. They are going to be uniquely motivated after last year's bludgeoning. But with this particular rivalry, whatever happened the previous year never really seems to matter. Whatever happened in the previous week never really seems to matter. And whatever happened across the season as a whole never really seems to matter. The Farmageddon game always seems to take place in a very isolated bubble that is affected by pretty much nothing else outside of their actual practices. So you give it the home crowd here at Jack Trice Stadium. You give it the tendency for Kansas State to do something goofy at some point that very well could compromise the game for them. And in the Farmageddon games that they win, they'd still do something goofy and it just doesn't compromise it for them when it could have. Iowa State tends to make less of those mistakes in Farmageddon games since Matt Campbell was hired as the coach. Playing the odds on this one, yeah, give me Iowa State.
Yep.
Which brings both of our win totals for Iowa State to an 8-4 season, 6-3 in conference play. Biggest questions for Iowa State's football team this year. How will the offensive line change from last year, and will it be able to fully enable the talent from the skill positions? This is a big talking point from last year. Our offensive line was terrible last year. It ranked, 130 out of 136 FBS teams or something like that. Our offensive line was bad. Our pass block was bad, although it wasn't as atrocious as our run block, which I'm pretty sure was rated dead last in FBS. Our run block was absolutely atrocious. We brought in a transfer from Wisconsin. We brought in a transfer from Louisiana Monroe. Hopefully that helps. I'm a little bit higher on the Wisconsin transfer just because Wisconsin tends to be good at producing, big guys on the line. But we have a loaded skill position group. You give me Ben Brahmer, Abu Sama, Rocco Beck, Jalen Knoll, and Jaden Higgins. Yeah, I love that skill position group. But if the offensive line can't figure out how to do their job, it's going to be difficult for the skill position players to do their job. But do you see any reason to believe that we're going to get major improvement?
We did have the room for it, I'll say. But I do like that we're coming back with obviously many of our guys from.
We're returning every single guy plus brought in 2 transfers.
Yes, exactly. So as much as I've seen teams kind of build upon sticking together, like as these guys have, like I've seen them just blast through like many opponents, and you're saying like our offensive line was bad.
It was.
However, we won that many games last year.
We did, and our offensive line was bad. Mm-hmm. I mean, so last year
was that more
bowl game against Memphis last year?
Oh yeah,
0 rush yards.
Definitely that one.
0 rush yards against Memphis. Abu Sama was not to blame for that. Mm-hmm. That was entirely on our offensive line, who could not open a hole for him the entire game. It was atrocious to watch.
Mm-hmm. So were you saying those performances like that, is that more of the teams we face, them being bad, or us getting lucky?
That was in what sense? What do you ask? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Let me think. So do you think our performance last year with our regular schedule, was that more of us getting lucky, or was that other teams kind of falling behind?
I think that was a lot of Becht, Knoll, Higgins, and Bramer doing everything that they could, because that is a talented skill position group. So when you get the skill position guys a chance to do their thing, they're going to do their thing, and they're good at it. You just have to get the ball there first. And in order to effectively do that, you got to have a better offensive line to give you more time to make good decisions. Beck needs more time to make good decisions in the pocket. Abu Sama obviously needs more holes in the run game. Zone reads are great if your offensive line's great, because then your running back can pick whatever hole he wants. A zone read's terrible if your offensive line is terrible, because now you have no holes at all. And then your running back has nowhere to go. And that was the pretty significant problem that we had, particularly in the Memphis and Texas games last year, was Sama just didn't have holes to run through. He had nowhere to go the entire game. And that was the big struggle. So let's go college football playoff predictions here. Will ISU make it? Obviously not. Not as an 8-4 team. Like I said, probably ranked, but maybe not. 20-something.
Mm-hmm. We're happy with the bowl game.
Yeah, we'll likely be looking at.
Yeah, we're definitely going bowling.
We'll go bowling. It'll be a decent bowl game, but it will not be top of the pile type stuff like we're going to be seeing in the playoff. However, for the playoff, Blake, who's your number 1 seed?
Ohio State.
All right, so we're in agreement there. Your 2 seed?
Texas.
Interesting. Who do you have them playing in the SEC championship?
I didn't think that far back.
Okay, so you just have them winning it then.
I just have Texas winning it.
You have Texas winning the SEC then.
Yes.
All right, I've got Ole Miss. I've got Ole Miss winning the SEC championship over Georgia. Your 3 seed?
3 seed Oklahoma State.
So you've got them winning the Big 12 championship. I also have that. 4 seed?
Clemson.
You got Clemson winning the ACC. Did that change yesterday? Was that a new revelation after yesterday's Florida State game?
Oh, my God, Florida State. Oh, my gosh. You lose like that in Florida State. Oh, my gosh.
Because it certainly shouldn't be a new revelation. I know for some of us, for me, I you know what, I'll admit it. I still had Florida State. I completely forgot that DJU was their quarterback. And you know what? Turns out he's still the same quarterback that he was at Oregon State, and he's still the same quarterback that he was when he was at Clemson. He didn't magically morph into Matt Leinart. Like, he didn't magically morph into Vince Young. He gets glazed by the media. He was a really high recruit when Clemson got him, and he's proven time and again at the college game he's not that good. So, yes, Florida State is not going to win the ACC. They are not even going to get into the college football playoff.
Nah, I feel like they're just in a bad place after the disappointment from last year.
They lost a lot of their talent to the transfer portal after that because you had the college football playoff committee essentially telling them winning doesn't matter in your conference.
Exactly. And we've been over this plenty of times last year. But I feel, yeah, they're definitely in a bad place.
Yeah. Let's go beyond that. So those will be for the 4 bowl games, for the 4 quarterfinal bowl games. Let's continue to flesh out the rest of the matchups. Let's go for these first round matchups. Blake, what's your 5-12 matchup here?
My 5-12 matchup is Notre Dame and Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Who do you have as your G5 champion, and where are they seated?
I just went by the.
You forgot to put a G5 champion in there, didn't
yes.
you? I've got Memphis for that one as the G5 champion. They're the 12 seed. I have Notre Dame as the 5 seed. This should be an easy win for Notre Dame. I don't think the G5 is going to be that strong this year. I have no reason to believe it's going to be very strong this year.
No.
6-11 matchup. What do you got for that?
6-11 is Georgia and Penn State.
All right. I already gave you my opinion on Penn State. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. I do have Georgia as my 6th seed. I thought about shuffling my seeding arrangement in here, but I think that an SEC runner-up is going to do better than the Big 10 and Big 12 runners-up. I also have Notre Dame running the table through the entire regular season, but they cannot get a top 4 seed because they are not in the conference. But yes, Georgia will be my 6th seed. My 11 seed is Alabama.
Georgia, Alabama.
And I have Georgia winning that game. I'm going to have them winning that pretty soundly. I do think that the top of the SEC is going to be a little bit wider of a gap than it has been in previous years, with Nick Saban no longer being at Alabama. I think that having viable challengers for Kirby Smart's Georgia Bulldogs they're going to be fewer and farther between. LSU, we still have no reason to believe that they're going to have any defense whatsoever. They certainly didn't last year, and I haven't heard a lot of good things about the transfer portal and recruiting for their defense. And Ole Miss, I already mentioned, I have them winning the SEC. I think Lane Kiffin, this is his time. He's finally got himself some guys on defense, and we know what a Lane Kiffin offense is going to do. And Jackson Dart is one of the best returning quarterbacks in college football. We know what we're going to get there. It's pretty much baked into the cake. Ole Miss is going to have a good team.
Mm-hmm. So Alabama, I feel like they're going to take a hit with like Nick Saban, like obviously retiring. But
I think they're a 2-loss team.
yeah, I do find it interesting that you're keeping them like barely in the college football playoff. I do that.
I think they're a 2-loss team.
Mm-hmm.
And your 7-10 matchup.
7-10 matchup, Michigan and Liberty.
Okay, so you did have a G5 champion in there.
Yes.
Okay. For this one, why Liberty, actually? Because they play nobody all year. So I'm not sure, even if they run the table, if they'll still be the highest ranked G5 champion.
What is their schedule?
For this game, I already mentioned, so I got Memphis as my G5 champion. I got them as the 12 seed. I'm not high on the G5 at all this year. That's why I'm not putting them anybody, regardless of who the champion is, higher than the 12 seed. My 7-10 is Oregon and Tennessee.
Talk about
Oregon. Oregon, I've got them losing to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. I can't see the committee bringing themselves to have Oregon ranked higher than Georgia after they both lose their conference championships. Especially with, I have Oregon as a 2-loss runner-up because I have them losing to Ohio State in the regular season and then not avenging it in the conference championship. Whereas in the with the SEC, I have Ole Miss as a 1-loss conference champion who is avenging their loss. I have Ohio State as the only power team that runs the table through the conference championship game. Like I said before, I don't think the ACC is going to be a very strong conference. I think Clemson could even potentially be a 2-loss conference champion. Oklahoma State is going to have a regular season loss to West Virginia that they avenge. Ole Miss is going to have a regular season loss to Georgia in Oxford that they will avenge in Atlanta. Notre Dame at that 5 spot. Oregon, though, will lose to Ohio State twice, but those will be their only losses to the unanimous number 1 overall seed going into the college football playoff. I think Oregon can play them pretty darn close to. They're going to fall into the category of what you might call a good loss. Tennessee, on the other hand, Tennessee's a fun one to look at because I do think they beat Alabama during the regular season, and that's the biggest one. That's the biggest detail on their schedule that's worth looking at here. Is that, and if they do successfully beat Alabama, I think they're more than likely a 2-loss team because Josh Heupel's done a great job recruiting. I don't want to say I trust Nico Iamaleava yet, considering he's a freshman and he's going to be starting under center. But the team that Tennessee has built around Iamaleava is really good. We've seen that Josh Heupel can, in fact, coach defense. We saw a bunch of that in the last couple years as Tennessee has drastically improved. So that is that quarterfinal matchup, or not quarterfinal, first round matchup, and then the final one. Who's your 8-9?
I got Utah and Bama.
Utah and Alabama. Utah is your 8 seed?
Yes, Utah is 8 seed, and then Bama is 9.
Okay. For this one, I have West Virginia and Michigan. I don't think that the selection committee will give West Virginia anything higher than an 8 seed, although I believe that they deserve something higher than an 8 seed. Ohio State and Notre Dame are going to be the only teams to run the table before the playoff starts. Notre Dame can't take a top 4 spot. Everybody else after that, there's going to be a lot of 1-loss teams, I think. Georgia, I think, is going to be 1 loss. Oregon, I think, will be a 2 loss. And I think you could make a decent argument that West Virginia should be seated over Oregon. That said, the selection committee, I think, largely gives a lot more attention to the Big Ten and SEC because of the power of those conferences. I think they tend to get favored. I'm relying on that favor to get Oregon seated ahead of West Virginia. Michigan, I don't see how you can get them even higher than that 9 seed, though, without even making their conference championship game, including a end-of-the-season loss to Ohio State. They're not going to be looking great at the end of the season. And that will be the 8-9 matchup, and the winner getting Ohio State. And let's talk about this one. Who do you have Ohio State playing in the quarterfinal?
We'll put Ohio State next up against Bama.
You've got Ohio State against Alabama. I have Ohio State against West Virginia in the Peach Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you thinking with that game here?
Ohio State's definitely going to come out on top.
Yeah, I agree. Ohio State is one of the most dangerous teams. I'll talk about about the later rounds later here in a second when we get to them. But West Virginia, as much as I like them, as much as I'm high on them, I don't think they have the firepower to take down Ohio State. Clemson and Notre Dame, Rose Bowl.
You got Clemson and Notre Dame, and then you had Notre Dame coming out on top in the Rose Bowl.
Yes, I do have Notre Dame winning against Clemson in the Rose Bowl. Like I said earlier, Clemson might be a 2-loss conference champion that's getting in here. And getting the top 4 seed based on the new rules alone. I do think Notre Dame, with their schedule, will run the table. Now, granted, their schedule is pretty easy. That said, I still trust Notre Dame more than I trust the ACC right now. So I'll give Notre Dame the win on this one. Fiesta Bowl, Oklahoma State, Georgia. Who do you have taking this one? Or I guess who do you have playing against Oklahoma State, I should say?
I think we both have Georgia.
You have Georgia?
Yeah, we both.
You had Georgia as your 6th seed, right?
Yes, we both had Oklahoma State and Georgia.
So we both have an Oklahoma State-Georgia matchup. Who do you have winning this one?
I think we're both in agreement with Georgia.
Georgia? Yeah. Georgia's got a lot of firepower. They're just they're not a top 4 seed because they can't be. End of story.
Mm-mm.
But I do think that they are a better team than Oklahoma State. They're just returning too much. Like I said, there's going to be a massive divide of power at the top of the SEC. It's going to be Ole Miss and Georgia and everybody else, in my opinion. So, yes, Georgia will take that one. Who do you have Ole Miss playing? I've got that one being the Sugar Bowl.
I don't have Ole Miss playing, but
oh, that's right. Who was your 2 seed?
My 2 seed was Texas, and
Texas. Who do you have them playing?
Texas will be. One sec.
Probably also the Sugar Bowl then.
Yes. Texas will go up against Michigan after Michigan beats Liberty, and
Texas and Michigan play towards the start of the year here, don't they? They have a regular season game.
I didn't see that, but Texas.
That's one of the reasons why I think Michigan might have a tougher time with this playoff here, getting a higher seed. I think they're going to have an early season loss to Texas.
They're going to have an early season loss to Texas, and for this one, I feel like Texas is going to lose the quarterfinal up against Michigan. And then Michigan will be in semifinal.
Yeah, I think Michigan, they lose to Texas early on. I think they lose the game, and I think they lose both of them incredibly close, and I think they lose to Oregon in Ann Arbor in overtime. So Michigan will be a 3-loss team that gets in as a 9 seed because they're not going to have any bad losses, just 3 very good losses. As for me in the Sugar Bowl, I have Ole Miss playing against Oregon. Oregon will have beat Tennessee in the first round. And that Ole Miss-Oregon game, I think we're talking about a massive power difference between these two teams. Give me Ole Miss to run roughshod over Oregon in this one. Which takes us to the semifinals. Blake, Who do you got Ohio State playing in the semifinal here? Because I know you've got them in the semifinal.
So Ohio State and Clemson. Obviously, Ohio State's coming off.
So you took Ohio State, Clemson. I got Ohio State, Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl. Notre Dame, you've gotten real far against an easy schedule. You got a crazy lucky draw in the first 2 rounds of the college football playoff as well, getting Memphis and then Clemson. But after that, you get to the semifinal and your luck runs out. Now you have to play an opponent who actually belongs here. Ohio State is going to they're going to rip you to shreds. It's not going to be pretty.
No.
It's going to be a very ugly game, and Ohio State is going to absolutely run away with the Orange Bowl. And how about the Cotton Bowl? Blake, you got the Cotton Bowl.
Cotton Bowl, we got Georgia and Michigan.
And
give me Georgia.
Like Georgia against Michigan.
Give me Georgia against Michigan. And then Ohio State coming out on top of Georgia in the Natty.
All right. I got Ole Miss defeating Georgia. This will be the 3rd time this year that they'd played each other. This one will be in the Cotton Bowl. Part of the big difference with this one here is the location selection for the bowl games. I believe that Ohio State would rather play Ole Miss than Georgia. So they're going to try to set the locations so that the crowd will favor Ole Miss. That's why I believe that they're going to send Georgia and Ole Miss to the Cotton Bowl, and Ohio State will take the Orange Bowl for Notre Dame because neither location presents a really distinct advantage for Ohio State against Notre Dame. So Ohio State will beat Notre Dame regardless. Because it is at the Cotton Bowl and not at the Orange Bowl, I think that poses a crowd advantage for Ole Miss in this kind of a game. This will be the first time that crowd advantage has actually successfully made the difference between these two teams playing because I talked about before, Georgia will win in Oxford in a hostile crowd. Ole Miss will win in Atlanta against a hostile crowd. I think this time Ole Miss has a, generally speaking, friendlier crowd at a neutral site, and Ole Miss does, in fact, win it with the crowd behind them. So the national championship game will be Ohio State and Ole Miss. Blake, who do you have winning your natty?
I had Ohio State going up against Georgia, and then Ohio State coming out on top against Georgia.
All right. I have Ole Miss taking out Ohio State, and Lane Kiffin will win his first natty and take Ole Miss to the superpower status that I think that they've been heading towards for a long time and were never able to reach because of Saban at Alabama. Now that he's out of the picture, now that divisions are gone, this is the opportunity for Lane Kiffin to really bring together something special at Ole Miss, and I think that's what we're going to witness here.
Yes.
This is going to be the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's football. Let's talk volleyball.
That's a lot of football.
That was a lot of football. We got a lot of good content to go through. I mean, it's the start of the season here. But yeah, volleyball. Let's go. Let's skip that little chunk right there. Let's go Big 12 rankings entering the season here. The coaches poll was not real high on the Big 12 here. 13th ranked Kansas, 16th ranked BYU, 17th ranked Arizona State, 23rd ranked Baylor. Also receiving votes TCU, Houston, K-State, Iowa State. This is wide open. This is really, really wide open. There's been a lot of roster changes on a lot of the teams here in the Big 12. We don't have Texas steamrolling through the league anymore. The coaches poll is not as high on Baylor as I expected them to be, which makes me wonder a little bit. Do they know something I don't? But that's the other. And the other thing with that too is Kansas was ranked higher than I expected them to be. They usually run pretty close in the league with how we are. and we tend to split games with them. So how that factors out, it's going to be entertaining. But pretty much any of the 8 teams that I just listed off could, in theory, win the Big 12 for volleyball. But here's Iowa State's schedule. They're going to start off the season here this Friday, August 30th, in Las Vegas versus Pacific. Win.
Win, definitely.
It's Pacific, win. At UNLV in the UNLV invite. Win. Versus Toledo. Win. This is the Cyclone Invitational. That begins September 5th.
Yep. So first against Toledo, that's a win.
Yep. Cyclone Invite versus Wake Forest. Win. Wake Forest is one of the weakest teams in the ACC year in, year out. Illinois.
Loss.
I also have this as a loss. I'm curious to your reasoning because it's probably different than mine.
Say yours first.
It's Cyhawk football that same day, and I have a hard time believing we're going to be focused.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. I feel like Illinois could be more battle tested, like with like their returners, like coming off against Nebraska and like Wisconsin.
Potentially,
I have that feeling too.
Potentially, you could also say the same thing about us having played Texas for the last how many years, and we certainly return more experience.
Mm-hmm.
We're returning depth at every single position except for the middle blocker, and we did a great job in the transfer portal in that, in my opinion.
Yes, we got two transfers and 3 freshmen coming.
Yeah, I really like what I've seen from them so far during spring ball, but nonetheless, I do think a lack of focus is going to be a problem. Saturday, September 7th against Illinois. Wednesday, September 11th, team out east. Win. They're terrible at volleyball. Moving on.
Last year, they almost got lucky.
And that was with a crowd that was definitely in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
Not happening this time. I think it's pretty likely that we win that in a sweep.
Think so?
And a pretty pronounced sweep at that. I think we do pretty darn well against them.
I forgot 2 years ago, was that a sweep or did they get one set on us?
3-1.
3-1. Okay. And last year, like with the crowd with them, I feel like us 3 alone, like kind of made up for most. Like
we do carry a student section.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
like they even had a student section last year.
Then they've got a little whoops, I made a typo in my script here. Friday, September 13th. Friday the 13th. Oh, that's great. I had a typo that said 23rd, and I was like, that ain't right. But anyway, that one's versus UTEP at the South Dakota Classic. That will be in South Dakota. I've got this chalked as a win.
Win.
Saturday, September 14th at South Dakota. Same tournament. Win. And then September 15th, Montana State at the South Dakota Classic. Win. We're
going through UNLV.
There's no reason to believe that any of those teams are going to be any good.
We're going through UNLV. We're going through Cyclone Invitational. We'll barely get out of Cyclone Invitational, and then definitely South Dakota Classic.
Yeah. Thursday, September 19th at Colgate. Win. Saturday, September 21st at Syracuse. Loss. This is a tougher one to gauge because it's not like Syracuse was getting votes in the coaches poll or anything like that. The ACC just has a way of being tricky with volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
They are difficult to predict, and this is one of those teams where they might get a little bit too easy to sleep on. And that worries me because it's not a team you think about all that often.
Mm-mm.
And if there's any team that regardless of sport, it seems like, it doesn't matter whether it's football or basketball or whatever, that can just catch you off guard, it's Syracuse. So that's what I have happening. That's what I see in this game. Loss at Syracuse. It doesn't help that game is going to be in New York either.
Oh, yeah.
Saturday, September 28th versus West Virginia. Win.
I don't know why I didn't mark down West Virginia and Cincinnati, but I feel like West Virginia will be a win.
Yeah, I have the same thing. October 2nd versus Cincinnati, win.
Mm-hmm.
October 5th at K-State.
That'll be
loss.
Yep.
K-State should have a decent team this year. The way I feel about this game might change leading up to it because it's a couple months out. But for now, I don't like playing K-State on the road in volleyball.
No.
Things tend not to go well when we do that.
Mm-mm. For me, this will be the start of like my handful of like mid-season losses.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one here. October 9th at Houston.
That's a win for you.
I have that as a win.
That's a loss for me.
Houston graduated a lot of their talent. That's why the coaches poll is not as high on them anymore.
Okay. I remember like us just barely beating them last year.
Right. They had a lot more raw talent in the previous few years, and they are returning now. This is going to be a step back year from them. They're going to be entering a rebuild for their volleyball program. So I think that we are going to be pretty much unequivocally the better team than Houston. October 11th at UCF. I have that as another win.
That'll be another loss for me.
UCF's not good at volleyball. I don't know what you're thinking.
We've had history of shooting ourselves in the foot against teams we thought we would win against. This is like this for me. It's just like I said, another like midseason loss. It's like a what are we doing kind of game. That's what I feel like is going to happen.
It feels like you've got that chalked up though for multiple games in a row here. Where like I understand that happening as a one-off kind of thing, but I can't see us. There's no way I can see us losing to both Houston and UCF. I can't see that happening.
No. Next one we can agree on though.
October 16th versus BYU. This one's in Hilton Coliseum, but I still don't like it. BYU I think is probably underrated right now by the coaches poll. They're always dangerous in volleyball. So I got this one as a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Anything more to add to that one?
It's just BYU. That's
what they do.
They've proven dominant, and they've proven dominant, especially in the Big 12 last year.
Yep, they did prove themselves. That's the other thing too is coming from the WCC, we didn't necessarily know what to expect. They got to the Big 12, and they proved that they are worth being at the top of the Big 12 standings.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually do have BYU as my selection to be the conference champion in volleyball.
Mm-hmm. I still praise BYU for having such clean in-house streams on ESPN+.
All right. Friday, October 18th versus Texas Tech. Win. Yeah, I'm not high on Texas Tech at all.
No.
October 23rd at Kansas.
Loss.
I have this one as a loss, but I was tempted to put it as a win.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I'm not confident in this game either direction.
Nah, especially on the road.
On the road is why I said loss, but it is if.
And Kansas is like higher in the preseason.
Right. People are high on Kansas right now. I'm not quite sure what to expect. I'm not quite sure what to expect out of them. But in mid-season form, yeah, I don't think that we're going to be able to. Sunday, October 27th versus K-State.
Win.
This time around, yeah, I've got us beating them in Hilton Coliseum with the national TV cameras on and everything. Yeah, this is a good chance for us to get that kind of win. This game has Hilton Magic written all over it.
Yeah.
This is like a 5-set back and forth type of game that I'm anticipating for that one.
Yeah, and I don't know where that was like during our Natty TV showings last year.
Yeah. Wednesday, October 30th at Baylor. Loss.
Loss.
If BYU doesn't win the conference, Baylor will. That's my prediction.
It's simple as that.
Those two teams, in my opinion, should be the best. Friday, November 1st at TCU. Loss.
That'll be a loss too.
This game has trap written all over it. It feels like a game that will probably be a couple games ahead of them in the standings, and will end up losing to them in a relatively close game that doesn't actually look as close as it was on paper. Probably like a 3-1 sort of deal. November 6th versus Houston.
Win.
Yeah.
Home team, and
again, not high on Houston, and we're at home. November 13th versus Colorado. Win. They're not good at volleyball.
No.
Moving on. November 16th at Texas Tech.
Win.
November 21st at Arizona State.
Loss. Trap game.
Loss. Not because it's a trap game, because I think Arizona State's legitimately a good team. November 23rd at Arizona. Win. We beat them last year on the road, and I don't see any reason to believe that they've gotten significantly better than us when I know our team has improved. November 27th versus Utah. Win. They don't take the sport of volleyball seriously over there. And if you take the sport of volleyball seriously in Utah, you're a BYU fan. Yeah,
that about sums it up.
The Utes don't even take it seriously. November 29th versus Kansas.
Day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I want to say win for this one so badly, but I still have it chalked up as a loss.
I feel like that'll be a factor too, like day after Thanksgiving.
It may or may not be. I feel like that would almost play of an advantage more to our part than to theirs. But I just can't bring myself to say that this one's going to be a win. My gut instinct says this one's a loss because I know they're going to have a decent team, and this is just the kind of stuff that happens with that's the way something always happens like that in the Big 12 with either Kansas or Kansas State. One of them wins a game here that they have no business winning. And I feel like or that maybe they have some business winning, but we probably should win. I feel like this is that game where it's like understandable that they win, but we should have. So my prediction on the season, we'll go 20-9 with an 11-7 conference record.
And I have 18-11, I think, if I did the math right.
Yep. All right. So biggest questions then for volleyball. For me, it's going to be how will our new middle blockers perform? During spring ball, Tierney Jackson and Amiri Hendricks-Walker impressed. I saw a lot of good things out of them, especially in that game at UNO. Now, granted, we're playing UNO. We're not playing Big 12 caliber competition in that spring tournaments these years. So, yeah, it's a tough spot to try to assess right now. And replacing the defense-offense combo of Alexis Engelbrecht and Jordan Hoppe is going to be a difficult task to do. And replacing with the experience that they've had with the Iowa State program, being around Coach Johnson Lynch's program so long, that's a tough adaptation to have to make. All right, and I know you've got a big question here for volleyball.
Yes, how will every newcomer adapt to Christy Johnson Lynch? Because we got Tierney Jackson and Amiri Hendricks-Walker coming with their experience, and then we have our new freshman newcomers.
Yes, and then my final question was: this is one that I've been kind of wondering since spring ball. Who starts at libero? Because Brooke Stonestreet is returning. She started the previous 2 seasons, and she's been great at it. Like she would start almost anywhere in the country. That said, what I've seen from Paula Kreschlach's development has blown my mind. And watching them both play at libero during spring ball, neither one really seemed to be playing significantly better than the other one. They were both playing incredibly well. So the skill gap appeared to significantly close, and I'm kind of getting that same feeling that I had the previous spring about Jordan Hoppe taking that step up and being a potential starter. I'm getting that same gut instinct about Paula Kreschlach. Got a little bit of Big 12 realignment news. Recap of the summer real quick. Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and Arizona State are now official members of the Big 12, if you hadn't gathered that already. The Big 10 and the SEC have proven to be disinterested with Clemson and Florida State, leaving the Big 12 as the best possible landing ground for those 2 schools. Do you think it's going to happen or not?
I feel like
when?
I feel like more of our focus is on UConn right now.
Over the course of the last week or so, maybe. But I feel like in the broad scheme of things, I think Clemson and Florida State are still bigger targets, and they do need somewhere to go because they need out of the ACC. And right now, the payouts for the Big 12 and the ACC are very comparable. If Florida State and Clemson switch, they're no longer comparable. The Big 12 is bigger. End of story. You potentially throw in that maybe Miami or a North Carolina, or an NC State or a Virginia Tech, something like that. Now you're talking about the Big 12 having some really, really serious dominance in terms of large media markets. Because Florida State is very popular across the state of Florida as a whole, which is one of the most populous states in the country. I believe it's the third most populous state in the country right now.
Mm-hmm.
Miami is Miami. Clemson has been a national brand for years. And North Carolina, also national brand. You bring in 2 of those 4, you're in a really good spot. It's Clemson and Florida State that have been leading the charge to get out of the ACC, though. And while Florida State seems to be a little bit more adamant about trying to get a spot in the SEC or Big Ten, Clemson seems to be actually quite on board with the prospect of landing in the Big 12. I just think they don't want to be the only one to go.
That's fair enough.
And they do need a little bit of legal help in order to get out of that ACC grant of rights that is trying to hold them into a terrible deal for the next 12 years.
So remind me again, is this like the result of like Florida State like not getting into like college football playoff last year?
That was a factor in the equation that may have sped things up, but it was already the ball was already moving in that direction as soon as the Pac-12 broke up. Because now it's a race. Now it's an arms race. Once the Pac-12 broke up, the other 4 power conferences are in an arms race, and it's going to be all right. Who has the teams that are worth picking up into other conferences, and which conferences are going to have enough strength as it is to be able to pick those teams up. Florida State and Clemson right now would actually dilute the value of the Big Ten and the SEC. That's why they're not interested in adding those schools. They would not dilute the value of the Big 12. The Big 12 isn't valuable enough per school yet in order for that to happen. So it would grow the Big 12. It would grow Clemson and Florida State's annual payout. So it's actually a win for both sides. Similar situation with North Carolina, Virginia Tech, NC State, Louisville, anybody else or Georgia Tech, any other ACC schools that the Big 12 might potentially be interested in adding. And the ones where that isn't the case, the Big 12 is not going to be interested in adding them. You're not going to see Boston College or Wake Forest come to the Big 12. It's not happening. And then, as you mentioned, with UConn, this was news that broke, was it 2 days ago? Yesterday, somewhere in that neighborhood. They've been engaging in conversation with UConn about joining as a member of the conference in all sports except for football beginning in 2025 and then potentially adding football in 2031 after they demonstrate significant investment into the football program. That's a good plan.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make us – so right now we're unofficially the best basketball conference. You want to make it so that there's no question whatsoever. You add UConn. And then in 2031, notice how 2031 is the football date. That's important because that's when media rights get renegotiated. That's when Brett Yormark can split basketball rights off, or when Brett Yormark can split football rights, grantive rights from everything else. So when you add UConn to that, well, now your basketball package carries some pretty heavy weight. That's going to blow other conferences' basketball packages out of the water. That's why the other conferences are going to continue to bundle everything else with football. Our basketball in the Big 12 would be powerful enough, and it probably already is, where we can separate it out and make significantly more money per school doing that. But you got to have a lot of major basketball power to do it. You go and you add UConn. You go from we probably can do it to we almost certainly can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Brett Yormark is real smart for pursuing UConn in this particular manner without adding football right away as a drag on the rest of the schools until the contracts get renegotiated.
Yeah, and I can see this moment too. Like he was right to do it at this moment too.
All right. High speed wins. Blake, you got a little bit of that sport that doesn't exist real quick.
Sport that doesn't exist. They're currently sitting at a 1-1 record. They had a win against Western Illinois to start the season somehow. Had a loss to Creighton and then tie at Drake and Des Moines. And then they will play again tonight against UNI at Cyclones Sports Complex.
All right. Follow the Cornfield Sports Pod on Twitter at CSportsPod. Blake, where can they find you at?
As always, you can find me at BlakeAttack1846.
You can find me at SFMattISU. Tap the follow button on Spotify, plus button on Apple. Subscribe on YouTube and on Rumble.
This has been Blake Peterson.
I'm Matt Menson, and this has been the opening show of Season 2 of the Cornfield Sports Pod.